Multiple greetings, everyone. I hope you are doing well and safe. This is Dr. Sehlaoui. My full name is Abdelilah Salim Sehlaoui. I am professor of TESOL and applied linguistics at San Houston State University here in Texas, United States of America. My topic is entitled Facing the 21st Challenge or Challenges by Developing Equity Literacy and Critical Cross-Cultural Communicative Competence in Educators and Academic Leaders Speaking the Language of Possibility. And I'll explain this type of language later on. I have good news and bad news to share with you today, and I will start with the bad news. People are left behind in this world, and that is really sad. That's bad news. 70% of 10-year-olds in the world are unable to read, okay? The global literacy rate for adults is 86.3%. That's huge. 175 million children aged between 3 and 5 are not enrolled in preschool education. The global number of out-of-school children has increased by 6 million since 2021, and it has now totaled 250 million. The current literacy rate of Pakistan is also at 63 or 62%, which means that an estimated population of 60 million is illiterate, according to the Pakistani Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training, 2023. So these are really bad news, and we need to do something about that. So 21st century challenges for education worldwide are numerous, but I'd like to just focus on the following. If you take this slide and you copy it and paste it in the Kingdom of Morocco, it will be relevant. If you take it to another country, it will be irrelevant. So worldwide, we are in need to recruit and train more qualified teachers to ensure a sufficient supply of educators. Female and minority representation is another challenge at all levels, especially in the STEM content areas. Need for IDEA practices is another one. Inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. The challenge of meeting the needs of culturally and linguistically diverse students is another one. And finally, the lack of funding and financial support to face the 21st century challenges remains another big obstacle or challenge. However, two major obstacles are actually cited in the research when it comes to the challenges of 21st century. The first one is hegemonic perspectives and practices and policies and procedures that have failed to develop educational leadership that is inclusive and responsive to the needs of diverse students and faculty. The second most dangerous obstacle is poverty, which is a huge obstacle worldwide that affects education K through college. And it's a vicious circle, okay? The next slide will show that visual that shows the interaction and relationship between education and poverty and opportunity. Here in the States, the National Association of Teacher Educators have called upon researchers and practitioners to get together to address this issue of closing the opportunity gap through education. And I'm one of those who have volunteered to work at in that project. So this is a big challenge. Poverty rates worldwide, 1.1 billion people live in acute multidimensional poverty across more than 100 countries in the world. The poverty rate in the United States was 10.5% in 2019. Currently, more than 42 million people live in poverty in the United States. And among those, we have the African American with 19% and the Hispanics with 16%. And that's big. Currently, the poverty rate in Pakistan is at 37%. and in the United Kingdom is about 20%. So those are very shocking numbers, and it's a shame in the 21st century that we have these things going on. So how can we face these challenges? Well, first of all, we need to understand that we cannot solve our problems with the same mentality that created them. All right? So we need to understand that. That's very important. According to research, there is need for bold and courageous leadership to overcome 21st century challenges that educators face today. All right. So the $1 million question that I ask is, what value does empathy and compassion have if we feel them interpersonally, but we do not fight racism or economic injustice through education, and what we do as teacher educators? So that is the $1 million question that we need to keep in mind and maybe follow up in a discussion after this presentation. Educators and academic leaders need to develop their C5, what I call C5. It stands for critical, cross-cultural, communicative competence. And equity literacy, it's another component, okay? And I will define these as I go. We need to practice self-care and pay attention to our well-being. We cannot face these challenges if we are sick, if we don't have good health and take care of ourselves. Build bridges through synergistic collaboration nationally and internationally. We need to seek external funding to address some infrastructure challenges to secure access to quality education for all students, K through college. Critical cross-cultural communicative competence for me is defined as the ability to effectively communicate across cultures and individuals of various backgrounds, but at the same time, you will be, or the person is being respectful, tolerant, and passionate. But they should also be critically aware of the socioeconomic and political context and the inherent power relationships given in that given context. Notice that I put critically in red because that's the component that's missing when it comes to this competence. C5 focuses on equity literacy and our ability to speak the language of critique and language of possibility in order to threaten bias and systemic inequities in society. Now, what is the language of critique? It is our ability to defend ourselves pedagogically in front of others. So if you know what you are doing, it's not enough to know what to teach and how to teach it, but also to know why you teach the way you are teaching and defend yourself pedagogically. The other level or step forward is to speak the language of possibility through your language of critique and bring about change. So bringing about change through language of critique is called the language of possibility. All right. The concept of equity literacy is composed of at least 4 interlocking abilities, according to Gorski and according to research. So someone who possesses equity literacy is able to do 1, 2, 3, 4 things. Number 1, recognize bias and inequities in classroom dynamics, school culture, policies, and so on and so forth, and in the broader society, and how these biases and inequities affect students and faculty. Number 2, respond to these biases and inequities immediately. And number 3, redress them in the longer term so that they do not continue to creep up in classrooms and schools. We should stop them. And then finally, to create and sustain a bias-free and equitable learning environment for all K through college students. So these are the 3 or the 4 interlocking abilities in that equity literacy competence. Equity literacy consists of bigger contextual understandings essential to our growth as equitable educators and leaders in schools in general, and in colleges of teacher education in particular, according to research. So Equity literacy consists of three components: knowledge, skills, and the will. The will that educators and academic leaders need to have in order to develop and become a threat to the existence of bias and inequities in their contexts. So when we commit ourselves to developing our equity literacy and C5, we threaten the existence of bias and systemic inequities because we have the knowledge and skills to see it, identify it, address it, and the will to eliminate it. So those are essential skills and knowledge and will that we need to have. At the individual level, we have lack of critical cross-cultural communicative competence that leads to more conflicts and perpetuates the status quo. Ignorance breeds fear and anxiety, all right? And more powerful people impose their agendas and interests on the less powerful. And we see this at different levels, all right? Politically, socially, and educationally, we see all of these practices now in the world. Okay. At this individual level, in my humble contribution, I have provided professional development workshops and training using multiple ways and techniques and strategies, such as the following that I have listed here: walking down the street activity, cross-cultural dialogues, case studies and critical incident scenarios, and also engage the participants in assessing their stages of development in the C5. For more information about these professional development activities, please visit my website, sehlaoui.com/services. And we can continue the dialogue and the discussion through that. At the systemic level, we need to create safe and non-threatening spaces, engage academic leaders in an authentic, critical, cross-cultural communication dialogues, and devote significant funding, resources to IDEA initiatives and practices through the internal and external funding. So we have to seek those fundings. And I was very lucky to have been successful in the area of grant writing and research in that area, and I'll be happy to talk to you about those ideas. The final strategy here is to develop IDEA policies and strategic plans to support them. Okay, that's essential, that's important. Research-based practices call for the following: diverse and dynamic models of leadership that have the following things. Number one, they build on teamwork locally, nationally, and globally. Value cultural differences and respect different perspectives. They create trust-based rather than fear-based environments. And the final one is to use an administration that is inclusive, culturally responsive, representative, and powerful enough to bring about organization change. Organizational change, as you know, takes time, but with patience, with knowledge and skills and the will, we can do it. All right. So at the curriculum content and process, we can also implement some changes there by creating and supporting culturally responsive critical pedagogy in teaching and assessment practices. We should offer classes in C5 and equity literacy at the graduate and undergraduate level, create centers for advocacy for critical cross-cultural communication and multicultural education, and support them financially. Provide incentives for faculty and staff to seek training in organizational IDEA to develop their C5 and EL, okay? And finally, create mentoring and supportive programs to encourage faculty from minority groups especially to hold decision-making positions and build structures of support to retain them. Because it is one thing to recruit diverse faculty and students, and it's another to retain them, to keep them in the program, all right? So all of that is important in order to fight the above challenges that we are faced with, and of course, together we can do it. That's the good news. All right. Thank you for inviting me to share these thoughts with you and for being here as a group of compassionate leaders who are pushing the frontiers of education in Pakistan to improve the quality of life and expand the possibilities for future generations in your nation. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.